These two skyscrapers at the World Trade University in New York, which were once measured by the history of carrying at a height of nearly 500 meters on 110 floors, can be called miracles in the history of architecture. They were not only landmarks in New York at that time, but also the pride of Americans. But it is such a twin tower, which was once known as the window of the world, that no one would have thought that it would no longer exist after a sudden attack on September 11, 2001. So how did this 9/11 terrorist attack in the United States, which caused a global sensation, happen? Now, through this issue, a massive high-definition food images of this event are collected. Let's pull the time back to 2001, September 11th. As usual, on September 11th, 2001, it was an ordinary morning with clear sky and calm seas. Pedestrians shuttled through various intersections of Wall Street in an endless stream, and the whole city was as orderly as a clockwork of a mysterious scene, and it was operating normally. However, a loud noise came from the net, but it broke all this. At about 8:46 a.m. that day, as a huge shadow passed by people, a plane crashed into Building 1 of the World Trade Center at a speed of about 490 miles per hour. Upper end of floor 93. There was a loud noise in the World Trade Center, and the crowd nearby was shocked. For a time, the twin towers of the World Trade Center have become the focus of people. However, just as the shock of the attack on Building 1 of the Twin Towers subsided, at 9:03 a.m., another plane flew almost in the same way in speed. They roared towards the World Trade Center, one after another, and crashed into Building 2 of the World Trade Center. The violent explosion was accompanied by orange flames, and billowing black smoke filled the sky over Manhattan Island, covering the sky. Because the plane crashed into the Twin Towers with extremely fast speed and violent impact, the airframe broke through the wall. A raging fire poured out of it, and the rest kept falling to the ground. Following this, Americans came to understand it was a meticulously prepared and organized terror attack. The first plane cut off was American Airlines Flight 11. At that time, the passenger plane was carrying 87 passengers and crew members, and it was scheduled to take off from Logan Airport in Boston at 7:59 a.m. that day and fly to Los Angeles. However, more than 10 minutes later, when the passenger plane climbed to an altitude of about 28,000 feet above sea level, the crew of the passenger plane were controlled by reporters one after another, and the route of the plane was diverted to New York. On the way to the hijacking of Flight 11, the US military had actually prepared two F-15 fighters to take off and intercept them. However, people had their own opinions on whether the passenger plane was really hijacked. As a result, two F-15 fighter pilots failed to receive the order to take off for a long time. It wasn't until 8:34 a.m., after Flight 11 entered the airspace of New York, that he began to descend rapidly and flew to the World Trade Center. At this time, the FAA suddenly received a distress signal from the flight attendant's cabin of Flight 11. So at about 8:40 a.m., two pilots received an emergency takeoff interception instruction from the upper level. But it was futile. Within 5 minutes, the initial collision took place as Flight 11, commandeered by the perpetrator, struck the World Trade Center at high velocity. The second hijacking was United Airlines Flight 175. The same is true of this passenger plane. It took off from Boston Logan International Airport and was also destined for Los Angeles. There were 60 passengers and crew members in the cabin. Was Flight 175 a miracle when it was hijacked, or did it control the passenger plane in the same way? At 8:51 a.m. that day, when Flight 175 successfully climbed to the scheduled cruising altitude of 31,000 feet, the attackers in the cabin began to take action. After quickly overpowering the crew, they stormed the cockpit to seize control of the aircraft, redirecting its course at will. Radio communications and responders are turned off and off course at any time. Because the two passenger planes lost contact at the same time, and the purpose of each other was not known in advance, the US military did not make the same response to the second trial Flight 175 until it received the new message that Flight 11 was killed, and after the first collision accident. However, when two US F-15 pilots who had just taken off were still searching for Flight 11 on the other side, at 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 appeared over New York one after another and crashed into the World Trade Center. At this time, it can be said that the collision of the World Trade Center happened when the US Military Security Department had not yet determined the target of the other party's attack and did not know the motive of the other party. In addition, two passenger planes, American Airlines Flight 77 and United Airlines Flight 93, were hijacked at that time. Both passenger planes were discovered only a few minutes before the crash. That is to say, 4 passenger planes were hijacked at the same time that morning. At 9:37 a.m., Flight 77 with 59 people on board crashed into the Pentagon. A few minutes later, Flight 93 crashed into Pennsylvania, with 40 crew members and passengers in the cabin, and the Wild Army couldn't survive. Throughout the whole process of this incident, the US military was obviously afraid to give the order to shoot down the passenger plane before figuring out the intention of the gatherers and determining how many passenger planes were hijacked in the air. After the incident, the fire trucks of the Pentagon in Washington, the World Trade Center in New York sounded the alarm, and they all rushed to the scene to carry out rescue operations. However, in the World Trade Center, all the elevators inside the 2 buildings have been damaged and can't run, which has caused great difficulties to rescuers. But for those on the lower floors, this is lucky enough. The instinct of survival drove these people to quickly evacuate all from the building. And those who are trapped at the top of the building, they are not so lucky. Where the Twin Towers were hit, fire and smoke kept spewing out from them. Many people chose to jump from the window of the building more than 300 meters high because they couldn't bear the raging fire and smoke. Hundreds of fresh lives disappeared in an instant, and the onlookers who witnessed all this were frightened to cry. Just when everyone was at a loss, at 9:59 a.m., Building 2 of Twin Towers collapsed, and a large amount of concrete dust came to their faces, instantly swallowing everything around them. Amid chaos, screams and desperate shouts filled the air as panicked crowds dispersed like headless chickens. Perhaps it was because of the violent impact of the passenger plane that the building structure was damaged, coupled with a large amount of aviation fuel spilled into it, and the violent burning of thousands of degrees caused the cylinder frame structure to lose its strength over time, making it difficult to support the weight of the upper stairs, thus causing the building to collapse, and then to the end. Just when people were in shock, at about 10:30 a.m. that day, Building 1, which had burned for more than an hour, also collapsed, and Building 2 quickly disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. For a moment, the smoke and dust of black crows enveloped the entire World Trade Center, and the scene was like purgatory on Earth. Simultaneously, over 300 kilometers away, the Pentagon, a symbol of America's military prowess, was similarly engulfed in smoke and destruction. More than 100 US military personnel were also killed in the attack. In response to this incident, Americans later pointed the finger at the depths. Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, quickly launched the war on terror to invade Afghanistan and was caught in the mud talk of the Afghan war for 20 years. The 9/11 incident became another attack on its homeland in American history since Pearl Harbor. This preview led to the collapse of the Twin Towers. The Pentagon was severely damaged and nearly 3,000 people died. Not only did it bring heavy losses to the American economy for a while, but this terrorist attack also caused a huge impact and far-reaching impact on the world.